Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Thank you for choosing to follow the YouTube channel N News Today. Right now, we will bring you the latest noteworthy updates that have just been reported. Please stay tuned. The mysterious ballistic missile Israel allegedly used to assassinate Iran's supreme leader revealed. Israel is believed to have used a little-known ballistic missile capable of flying outside the Earth's atmosphere in a surprise attack targeting Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The missile called Blue Sparrow, developed by Israel, is considered one of the weapons capable of penetrating enemy air defense systems thanks to its unique trajectory and high speed. According to military experts, the choice of this weapon reflects a tactical approach designed to bypass multiple layers of air defense and strike high-value strategic targets within a very short time. Blue Sparrow is an air-launched missile developed by Israel with a range of about 2,000 kilometers. After being launched, the missile follows a trajectory similar to that of a ballistic missile, accelerating rapidly and rising to the edge of space before re-entering the atmosphere and diving toward the target at high speed. This trajectory makes interception more difficult compared to low-flying cruise missiles. When re-entering the atmosphere, the warhead's extremely high speed significantly reduces the reaction time of air defense systems. Gray cylindrical debris believed to belong to a Blue Sparrow missile has reportedly been discovered in western Iraq along a flight path believed to be directed toward Iran. This suggests the missile may have flown across the Middle East before approaching its target in Tehran. Blue Sparrow is part of a series of target missiles developed by Israel alongside Black Sparrow and Silver Sparrow. Initially, these systems were designed to simulate Scud-type ballistic missiles for testing Israel's missile defense systems. The missile is about 5 meters long, weighs nearly 1.9 tons, and was originally used as a flying target during missile defense tests. However, Israel later carried out technical upgrades, allowing the missile to take on an air-to-ground strike role thanks to its high speed and ballistic flight path. Military experts say the use of the Blue Sparrow missile offers several tactical advantages. First, aircraft launch significantly expands the attack range. Fighter jets can approach the launch area from a safe distance and deploy the missile without deeply penetrating enemy airspace. Second, its ballistic trajectory makes the weapon harder to intercept than cruise missiles. While cruise missiles typically fly low and can be detected early by radar, ballistic warheads re-enter the atmosphere at extremely high speeds, giving opponents very little time to prepare interception. Third, this weapon is suitable for striking high-value targets such as command centers, command bunkers, or heavily protected complexes. According to sources familiar with the matter speaking to Reuters, the joint military campaign by Israel and the United States in Iran is entering Phase 2, focusing on ballistic missile bases buried deep underground. After the first week of opening airstrikes, which reportedly killed several senior Iranian leaders and triggered a spiral of conflict spreading to Israel, the Gulf region, and Iraq, while also prompting Israeli attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon, the campaign is now shifting toward more heavily fortified targets. The Israel Defense Forces (IDF) said it has struck hundreds of Iranian missile launchers deployed above ground that were capable of targeting Israeli cities. However, the next phase will focus on underground bunkers storing ballistic missiles and related equipment. Sources say many of these attacks on fortified targets may be carried out by the United States, deploying heavy bombers equipped with bunker buster bombs, weapons capable of penetrating deeply into Iran's heavily reinforced underground military facilities. One source said Israel's goal is to completely neutralize Iran's ability to conduct air attacks against Israeli territory before the war ends, while also weakening the leadership structure of the Islamic Republic. An Israeli military spokesperson has not yet issued official comments regarding the operational plan. Previously, the Times of Israel reported that the Israeli military expected the campaign to continue for at least 1 to 2 more weeks, aiming to strike thousands of targets in order to systematically degrade Iran's military capabilities and power structure. In the early hours of the morning on the 0th, each of the IDF announced that its air force had struck underground infrastructure believed to be used for storing ballistic missiles and air defense missile systems. This marks the first time the Israeli military has publicly acknowledged targeting Iran's underground missile facilities. Iran's Tasnim news agency in May 2025 released video footage of an underground missile city containing some of Iran's most advanced weapons, including Khorramshahr Qadr Hovizeh medium-range ballistic missiles and the Pave ground attack cruise missile. Tasnim said the site was one of hundreds of missile cities operated by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps (IRGC), but did not disclose the facility's location. In a State of the Union message last week, U.S. President Donald Trump expressed concern that Iran is developing missiles capable of reaching the American continent. However, assessments from the U.S. intelligence community reject this view, saying Iran would need at least another decade to successfully develop such long-range weapons. A 2019 DIA report explained that Tehran pursues ballistic missiles partly because it lacks a modern air force. These missiles provide Iran with long-range strike capability to deter opponents, particularly the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. Information about Iran's ballistic missile program mainly comes from interceptions of ships transporting weapons from Iran to Houthi forces in Yemen. The ambassadors of Iran and Israel held separate press conferences in Seoul, South Korea, exchanging sharp accusations as tensions between the two countries continue to escalate in the Middle East. Speaking through an interpreter, Iran's ambassador to South Korea, Kuchi, called on Seoul, one of Washington's key allies, to speak out more strongly to demand an end to what he described as illegal aggression by the United States and Israel carried out while nuclear negotiations were still ongoing. He warned that many coffins would return to the United States if Washington decided to deploy ground troops, and said Iranian attacks against Gulf countries hosting U.S. military bases would be unavoidable. Meanwhile, Israel's ambassador to Seoul, Raphael Harper, stated that the joint U.S.-Israel military operations aim to destroy Iran's nuclear development facilities and ballistic missile launch sites, while also helping liberate the Iranian people from oppression. South Korea has so far supported U.S.-led diplomatic efforts to restrain Iran's nuclear ambitions, but has not publicly endorsed the U.S.-Israel attacks, instead calling for the early restoration of dialogue. The United States and Israel launched their war against Iran on June 28, citing the need to eliminate Tehran's nuclear and missile threats. According to figures recently released by the Iranian government, U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran have killed 1,045 people, nearly equal to the total casualties during Israel's 12-day campaign against Iran in June 2025, which resulted in 1,060 deaths. U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the United States had sunk 24 Iranian ships, saying the campaign in Iran was progressing faster than expected and that the military was conducting hourly strikes. Specifically, Trump said U.S. armed forces had sunk 24 Iranian vessels. Speaking at a White House event, he said, "Their fleet lost 24 ships in 3 days. That's a lot of ships." President Trump also claimed that Iran had contacted him hoping to reach a deal to end the war. Trump said at the White House they asked, "How do we make a deal?" I said, "You're a little late. Right now, we want to fight more than they do." These remarks came as Trump praised the progress the United States had made so far, saying the military continues to completely eliminate the enemy. He did not specify who from Iran had made contact or whether it would lead to any serious effort to mediate a ceasefire. President Trump also said he must be involved in selecting a new supreme leader for Iran, telling Axios that the son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would be an unacceptable choice. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the American campaign in Iran is progressing decisively. Speaking at a press conference about the Iran conflict at U.S. Central Command, Hegseth said Iran hopes we cannot sustain this. That is a serious miscalculation. According to him, the United States is not running out of ammunition and can sustain the campaign as long as necessary. He emphasized, "We have only just begun to fight, and we are fighting decisively. Our ammunition is sufficient and our will is very firm. That means the timetable is ours and only we control it." Meanwhile, European countries are reluctantly being drawn into the Iran conflict, sending military aid to protect the interests of their allies while still maintaining a defensive posture. Meanwhile, more than 11,000 flights across 10 countries in the region have been canceled since the 28th. According to a statement from the press department of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, the force has launched the 21st wave of drone and missile attacks targeting sites in Tel Aviv. The IRGC said in a statement that the 21st wave of Operation True Promise 2 has begun. In this coordinated operation, drones and Khyber missiles were launched at targets in Tel Aviv. Israel bombs Lebanon. Iran retaliates by launching missiles with 1-ton warheads at Tel Aviv. Lebanese authorities recently announced that Israeli airstrikes in southern Lebanon over the past 3 days have killed 123 people and injured 683 others. On the afternoon of the 6th Tel Aviv, authorities continued bombing the southern suburbs of Beirut, Lebanon, reportedly targeting Hezbollah facilities. Israel also issued a notice calling on Lebanese residents in the area to evacuate immediately. Meanwhile, CNN reported on the 6th that Iran had announced it carried out a combined drone and missile attack on Israel, particularly targeting sites in central Tel Aviv. According to AFP reporters at the scene, several loud explosions were heard almost simultaneously in Tel Aviv after the Israeli military said it had detected missiles carrying cluster warheads launched from Iran. In a statement, the IRGC said it had fired ballistic missiles carrying 1-ton explosive warheads at key targets in Israel, including downtown Tel Aviv, Ben Gurion Airport, and the base of the Israeli Air Force's 27th Squadron located at the airport. Iran's state television reported that its military had carried out UAV strikes on targets in Tel Aviv and the Meron radar base in northern Israel. In the capital Tehran, many Iranian media outlets, including state television, reported that a series of new missiles had been launched from Iran toward Israel in this latest wave of attacks. Israel's emergency response forces said there were no initial reports of casualties in areas across the country. From the sinking of the Iris Dana to accusations that the United States borrowed Indian ports, India appears at risk of being drawn into the spiral of tensions. After the U.S. Virginia-class nuclear attack submarine USS Charlotte sank Iran's Iris Dana patrol vessel in international waters 50 nautical miles off the coast of Gale, Sri Lanka. Killing 87 people, attention has now turned to Iran's military replenishment ship, Bushehr. The Bushehr is currently anchored about 10 nautical miles from Colombo Port in Sri Lanka. While the Dana was sunk by a torpedo with a range of 20 nautical miles fired from a submarine in international waters, the Bushehr is located deep within Sri Lanka's territorial waters, making the situation diplomatically sensitive. This means that any military action involving the Bushehr could directly pull Sri Lanka into the regional conflict. According to the Hindustan Times, while Iran attempted to target U.S. carrier strike groups and oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, the Iris Dana and 17 other warships, including Russian Kilo-class submarines, were sunk by the U.S. Navy. Some former officers and strategists believe India should have protected the Iris Dana. However, in reality, India had no legal authority to intervene because it has no military conflict with either the United States or Iran. Given the current situation, international observers are closely monitoring developments in the Indian Ocean region and the strategic waters surrounding Sri Lanka. Previously, the Indian Navy said it had quickly dispatched reconnaissance aircraft and rescue vessels to the Indian Ocean waters off Sri Lanka, where the Iranian destroyer Iris Dana had been sunk by the United States. The order to deploy search and rescue operations was issued immediately after the Indian Navy received a distress signal from the Iris Dana after it was struck by a torpedo from a U.S. submarine. According to the Indian Navy, the Maritime Rescue Coordination Center, MRCC, in Colombo, Sri Lanka, received the distress signal from the Iranian warship. At that time, the destroyer was located about 20 nautical miles west of the city of Gale in southern Sri Lanka, within Sri Lanka's search and rescue responsibility zone. After receiving the information, the Indian Navy immediately launched its efforts. A long-range maritime patrol aircraft was deployed at 10 a.m. on the 4th to assist search operations conducted under Sri Lanka's coordination. A second aircraft equipped with air-droppable life rafts remained on standby for deployment if necessary. The sailing training ship INS Tarangini, operating nearby, received orders to assist and arrived in the search area at 4 p.m. the same day. At that time, the Sri Lankan Navy and other forces had already begun search and rescue operations. The survey vessel INS Sukanya departed from Kochi port in Kerala, southern India, to reinforce the mission. The Indian Navy and Sri Lankan authorities continued to coordinate the search efforts. Sri Lanka maintains a neutral stance in the conflict and has repeatedly called for resolving issues through dialogue. Iran, meanwhile, is a major buyer of Sri Lankan tea, the island nation's primary export. As tensions in the Middle East have not cooled, 2 Australian officials recently confirmed that the Oceanian country has deployed 2 military aircraft to the region as part of an emergency response plan. The Guardian reported that Canberra has deployed a heavy transport aircraft and a refueling aircraft to the Middle East to evacuate Australian citizens from the region. Speaking before Parliament, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced that military assets had been deployed to the Middle East but did not disclose details, while thanking Australians who risked danger to help their fellow citizens. Australia's neighbour New Zealand has also sent 2 military aircraft to the Middle East on the 0 day to prepare for evacuating its citizens from the region. Regarding the Middle East conflict, in an interview with Newsmax Television, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte declared that the military alliance is ready for the possibility of activating the Collective Defense Clause to respond to Iran. Mr. Rutte emphasized that what NATO is doing now is ensuring that we defend every inch of NATO territory comprehensively in all directions. Zelensky considers deploying troops to the Middle East. Russia suddenly speaks about supplying weapons to Iran. President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukrainian military groups and partners in the Middle East are coordinating for Ukrainian personnel to work on the ground. Specifically, after a meeting with the leaders of Ukraine's agencies, Zelensky said that in recent days Iran had used more than 800 missiles of various types and more than 1,400 drones in attacks. Ukraine could help protect lives and stabilize the situation. Partners have proposed this issue. I have instructed the preparation of support options for the relevant countries and to provide assistance in a way that does not weaken our own defense capabilities in Ukraine. Zelensky affirmed that Ukraine's military has the necessary capabilities. He said Ukrainian specialists will work on the ground and that teams have begun reaching agreements on this matter. He also declared that we are ready to support substantive efforts to stabilize the situation as well as recovery, including ensuring maritime safety in the region. Meanwhile, from the opposite side, when asked whether Russia plans to provide any assistance to Iran, particularly by supplying weapons beyond political support, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov emphasized that currently there has been no request from Iran. Our consistent position is widely known and that position remains unchanged. Also speaking to the press, Peskov said military actions in the Middle East and their impact on the international oil environment would not lead to fuel price fluctuations in Russia. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov noted that in this case, the international environment related to the conflict in Iran cannot and should not be a reason for any fluctuations in our fuel prices. Of course, the government is continuously monitoring the situation. Peskov added that the government and the Federal Anti-Monopoly Service, FAS, are monitoring fuel price developments in Russia. Last year, Iran signed a 20-year strategic partnership agreement with Russia. Russia is currently building 2 new nuclear power plant complexes in Bushehr, home to Iran's only nuclear power plant. Iran has also supplied Russia with Shahed drones for use in the military campaign in Ukraine. Also from Russia, Russian Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu told reporters that the attacks on Iran represent an unprecedented disregard for international law. Shoigu said, "We are facing an unprecedented disregard for international law established after World War I and World War II.